Welcome back. It has been nothing less than a blockbuster entry for NYKAA with its first initial public offering. The IPO has now made Falguni Nair India's wealthiest self-made female billionaire. Now, founded in 2012, NYKAA was an online platform for beauty products which soon became a top company backed by several celebrities. It's also very interesting to know that Nair had founded this company just a couple of months before she turned 50. NYKAA's success on the stock exchange is also a positive sign for several budding startups in our country. India currently is the world's third largest startup in the ecosystem. Even in a pandemic year like 2021, 31 startups have emerged in this country. So that's a huge and a big boost to the Indian economy and also to several budding entrepreneurs. And to discuss this further, we have our experts who are joining us on this broadcast. We have Mitali Nikor, who's an economist and founder at Nikor Associates. We have Preeti Khurana, editor-in-chief of Clear Tax. We also have Professor Dr. Yamini Agarwal, director, Bharati Vidyapeeth Institute of Management and Research, and also associate editor of Finance India. Thank you very much, ladies, for joining me here on India Ahead. And it gives me such a pleasure that I have a female panel today to discuss about this woman who clearly set the fact that age is no bar. Mitali Nikor, if I could take that to you.
Thanks a lot, and it's really such a change to be on an all-women panel. Many of us are often the token female panelists sometimes on these news shows. So it's really good, and congratulations to India Ahead for assembling this panel. I think today what has happened is that women entrepreneurs have seen a ray of hope with this IPO. It has been proven that the market is willing to invest in a gender neutral way as long as you have a business model that is generating the returns, it is serving the needs of customers, the market is willing to put its weight behind the offering. And what is amazing is that if we notice, NYKAA caters primarily to female consumers. So this is also a way for the Indian female consumers to show their, market worth and to show to other companies that they are a consumer group to be reckoned with and that they now are having the purchasing power that is necessary to create what we in economics call the feminist economy or the women's economy, in that sense that your sellers are female, buyers are female, and both the sides have the economic power to create a market for themselves.
That's very interesting. Preeti Khurana, if I could bring you in on what Mitali really said, because the fact that women in our country, especially young girls and young women, is such a huge market, and if you see every industry, every company somewhere is trying to tap on that market, which was successfully done by NYKAA. It started as a small online forum with multiple brands coming together. It was like a one-stop shop, and the way it has succeeded from 2012 to 2021, the journey of 9 months has been a remarkable experience for many budding entrepreneurs.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And so, in the past, we've seen that NYKAA has created a space for itself, especially in the segment of cosmetics. There were already certain players, but NYKAA sort of had a breakthrough and, their offerings were different. They brought about so many international brands, which we could never actually imagine buying online. So, they created value for customers. And whenever we talk about a startup, especially in the e-commerce space, it's very interesting that, we are all applauding that a female entrepreneur is behind it. But if you look at it, in this industry, like so many IPOs have come through, and male or female, like what we are noticing is that the markets are absorbing this kind of euphoria around internet companies. And I think that's a completely different way of looking at investing altogether, and it's a great way that Indian markets are shaping up. And in that sense, I think NYKAA has created value, for consumers. Like somebody was mentioning, probably all of us have at some point in our lives we've been, bought products over NYKAA. We've heard about NYKAA. So in that sense, their growth story seems formidable. Their they're actually one of the only startups who are actually generating cash flows. So they're not just burning money. So in that sense, fundamentally, man or a woman, we know that if fundamentally you're strong, and the basics remain the same. So you have to keep focused on growth, you have to show profits, you have to have cash flows which are positive. So if you're doing all of that, then of course you are succeeding at it. So yeah, I think it's just phenomenal. And it's actually a proud moment, and not just because Falguni Nair is she's a woman, but also because for the startup industry, such a company, an e-commerce setup to come through and then sort of do physical stores, to branch out into fashion and other variants. I think it's pretty exciting that
And
what
she
they've
also
achieved
set
in
the
a short
trend that
period
it's
of time.
never too late to take that plunge or to take that risk, which many of us are always fearing, getting into the business aspect, that is it going to be, is it the right time? Is it not a right time? Are we sufficiently equipped in our bank accounts to take that plunge? Professor Agarwal, what does this really mean for the startups in our country? Because it also is a positive sign for the Indian economy. It also means that despite the pandemic, the Indian economy is opening up. Does it also mean that several young entrepreneurs who are looking at who faced a lot of setback since 2020 to 2021 during the coronavirus pandemic, do you think that this is also a sign that we are here to now grow and open up more?
Well, I think if you look at the specifically the startups in the e-commerce industry, and you look at the unicorns that have been coming, there have been about 40 which have been identified so far. Does give a strong indication as to how the information technology, e-commerce market, retail, as well as consumerism is changing its face for people. The growth at which the reforms have been taking place, especially the digitalization, as well as financial payment systems that are there, they've been helping the consumers and the businesses to reach with each other. And the pandemic has fostered it more because there is a buying need and there is a supply which is there, which is meeting through these e-commerce requirements. Startups in all these zones which are meeting the specific gaps which were not fulfilled by other brick and mortar companies, let's say a 24/7 cosmetic shopping zone for ladies, which NYKAA meets, especially with branded products and at lower reasonable prices also, is something what is being delivered through NYKAA. Similarly, many others, if you see Zomato or the others that have come up into the region, show that the startups have become successful as aggregators, as people who are bridging these gaps which exist in the market between the buyer and the supplier. So I feel it's a very strong startup base, which is specifically, strengthened by the overall process of financial inclusion, digitalization, as well as the confidence that the businesses, especially the financial institutions, DFIs, are showing towards the e-commerce setup, as well as business models which are based upon aggregations and others.
All right. Mithali Nikor, the concept of investments, the concept of IPO is also very soon gradually catching up with the youngsters in our country. Budding youngsters started earning, they have good jobs, but they don't really know what to do with their money. They are listening to a lot of these terms, invest, they are listening to a lot of these terms, IPOs. So if you have to explain it to a young person about what the investment should be, what is an IPO, how do you explain to them? Because many of the youngsters who are watching our show today would want to know, why are we talking about IPO? What is NYKAA IPO?
So I think, what we have to really understand is that there are different classes in which any person can invest, right? The simplest and most risk-free investment is to go for a fixed deposit in a bank, for example. That is what we call debt investment, where you simply park your money in a fund and it grows at a fixed rate, like say 5%, and there is no investment or exposure to risk, But if you want your savings to grow at a faster rate, then of course you have to invest in businesses and in the market. And an IPO, like an initial public offering, is basically a company coming out on a stock exchange and saying, would you like to buy a very minuscule share of the ownership in my company? And invest in my company, invest in this idea, because I will offer you a faster rate of return than the risk-free rate that you currently enjoy when you invest in debt. So
Okay.
that is exactly what young people, young investors are looking for today, to invest and to get a faster rate of return. Now, the fact that a company like NYKAA, led by a female CEO, serving primarily female consumers, is so oversubscribed, shows that the market does not care whether it is serving women's interests or women consumers or male consumers. They have confidence in the company's basic core offering. And that is the same thing that we are seeing, whether it's Zomato, whether it's and now Paytm is coming in. These brands, these digital services have become the life and blood of young consumers. They
And
are using them
Mitali,
every day.
now that
So
you
they
also
have
pointed out
confidence.
that, this the digital platform e-commerce has actually become the life and blood for youngsters. Preeti Khurana, then what does it mean for other companies who are not online yet? Does it also increase the nervousness and the anxiety for such firms, for such companies, for such retail outlets, that if you don't switch to online or even have an online, a virtual and a physical existence, then the near future can be a little troublesome?
Sure, I think that would be a correct assessment. But also, I would like to point out the kind of pricing we are seeing right now. Like what NYKAA has been oversubscribed and listing gains have been phenomenal. A lot of what happens in the stock market, especially in terms of IPOs, is all about the mood in the market. So the mood is really upbeat. And that's what shooting up the prices. Now they have a growth story to tell, but how far that comes along, I think that we'll see in the near future. When you talk about other retailers and other businesses who are not yet online, I think now it's really time to take that leap, because we've seen through the pandemic that those who did not take that digital leap were sort of left behind. So if you're a business who's catering to consumers, if you're B2C, if you have a connect with your customers, then perhaps switching to an online mode would be beneficial for you. But of course, if you are a business, then you evaluate if it's really feasible for you to do an online business. And there have been several ways and mechanisms of doing an online business. So there have been nearby shops and chains who've switched to perhaps WhatsApp and other modes of communication where you could still interact with your customer, but you essentially don't need an online presence. And what we are now seeing is that in the near future, people could be able to buy goods and other things from Instagram. Even YouTube is planning to launch where influencers could sell goods online through that their videos. So in that sense, the world is really shifting online. Essentially, whatever we need as basics in our day-to-day lives, I think most of that people are switching to online because it's convenient. So in that perspective, I feel that if you are a retailer, if you are a business, then you have to look at online means, and slowly we'll see that there's going to be a much more adoption. We've heard of FANG stocks in the US, which are all tech companies, which are companies like Netflix and Amazon, which are actually pretty sought after, and they've had great gains, even though they may not have made profits. Some of them may not have made profits or may not have great fundamentals. But internet business is, I think, in that sense, this is the decade or perhaps 1 or 2 decades of internet businesses, and we will see quite a few of them flourish in the near future.
And this pandemic clearly has made our dependence on e-commerce and internet so very much that probably even if the pandemic comes to an end, we still are going to be laid back, in the sense, the easiest way is to go online and order something which you can actually step down from your house and buy in a physical store. But Professor Agarwal, how is your analysis or your reading of the several other companies which have come up for listing? For example, it started with Zomato started. The entire the new age concept started with Zomato, with people actually starting to show interest, and young investors starting to show interest in investing in IPOs. It started with Zomato, then it went on to Car Dekho, NYKAA, and now Paytm. How is your reading of these different companies now coming into the stock market?
Well, overall, the market is in a high spirit, and it's reached new heights. So it is a phenomena which we say timing the market. So most of these IPOs right now are coming because the e-commerce industry has seen a boom, especially in the pandemic. Also, the sales among all retail chains for all industries is the biggest in the e-commerce market right now. So whatever growth of sales we've seen is in this. So they have timed the market both in terms of the interest of the DFIs and the FIIs in the stock market, as well as the growth in the e-commerce market. And given the valuations which people are forecasting for their businesses, they are pegging them at very high premiums and bringing these businesses to a more stable positions with funding them through equity, because they would require a heavy amount of a capital to sustain for a very long time and to become profitable given the scenario, because it is the economies of scale that these particular businesses would enjoy once they are able to join the networks of the particular business that they work on, whether it's Zomato, whether it is Paytm. So it is a very network economy which will work for them, and the faster they grow in the network, the faster they develop their consumer base, their supplier bases will ultimately lead their models or the business models to generate profits which can give rich dividends to the equity shareholders.
And also, from my understanding, from the people who are just budding investors and they have just started getting into the concept of investing, it also has a brand connect. For example, if you have NYKAA, if you have Paytm, you have Zomato, because these are the things that you probably use on a daily basis. So it's also the brand connect that pushes young investors to actually enter the market scenario, start investing in whether it is IPO or something else. So that also has been a stark change. And I see it with people around me as well, that because there is a brand value, there's a connect with a certain brand that you're talking about, then they're more than willing to invest and open up and understand the concept of investment and IPOs. But it has been a wonderful debate and a discussion, and it's been, it's been so wonderful to have all three lady panelists with us discussing about yet another lady who has set the benchmark for all of us, saying that age is no bar. It's never too late to take that risk, and also probably educating the young Indians about an open market where you can probably take that risk of having a startup of your own. India is a growing startup with 40, as Professor Agarwal said, with 40 unicorns being mentioned in 2021. The days, at least for now, look a little bright for our investors. Thank you very much, Mithali Nikor, Preeti Khurana, and Professor Yamini Agarwal for joining me here on India Ahead. With that, it's also a wrap on this edition of News on India Ahead. Thank you very much for tuning in.